5, 4, 3, 2, 1.5, 1 1/4, 1 1/8, 1. Blast off. Now we're live. You know we were live during that countdown,
Hi.
right?
I know we were. Yeah, I saw it.
Cool.
You're really good at
Why
this.
didn't you stop me, Jonathan?
You're
Why
really
didn't you stop me,
hosting
Jonathan? What?
podcast. Host.
Who's hosting what?
I don't know.
What are you?
Unqualified. You're hosting a podcast.
You're just mumbling incoherently.
It's called. No, you are hosting a podcast called Unqualified Gamers.
Episode 83.
Episode 83. That's 83 closer to 100 than when we started.
That is. You're right.
I know.
Can't argue.
I know. So, yeah, so that's crazy. I mean, that's closer to 100 than we ever thought we'd be when we started at 0.
Totally agree. YouTube, thanks for joining us. Podcast listeners, thanks for joining us. John and I have had an awful day. Just everything has been bad about it. So apologies if we're a bit less high energy than usual. We will try to be fun and talkative and upbeat like we always are, because I've been waiting 8 months for this review of Bravely Default, because that's what I'm going to talk about.
I think actually 8 months is your playtime.
Yes, 8 months of playtime. That is impressive.
Right, I think you had 8 months of playtime in this game now.
Yeah, so there's that. So no, I am excited about that. And I like broadcasting. You know, when I was in college, I remember I would have the worst day ever, and I did a radio show. The second I went in that radio studio and turned on the mic, boom, I was happy and my day was better and all that good stuff. Now it's different because with this podcast, I have to look at your horrifying visage through the internet, which is barely stomachable.
Visage is not even close.
That is definitely the right word.
I guess it's kind of close.
It's definitely exactly close. It is absolutely the right way to use it. It is visage.
It's not visage.
It's definitely visage.
That's not how you pronounce that word.
It's definitely visage.
Visage, I promise.
So I am sick of looking at your visage through the internet, but I will power through, because at least I'm going to do most of the talking in this episode, which means it'll be really good. And apologies also, YouTube, for my webcam. Apparently my Apple is not getting along with my Microsoft LifeCam Studio webcam. Imagine that. So it decided to randomly recognize and then not recognize the driver for it and things like that. So I'm using my built-in webcam, which is clearly lower quality and lower lighting and all that stuff. But aside from John and I both being miserable and severe technical difficulties that delayed the beginning of our recording by 45 minutes, I'd say things are going to be pretty good. Things are looking up. What do you think?
Yeah, actually, I think this camera makes you look better. You're far less fine. Do you know what I mean? Like your features are much fuzzier, and you look great.
Great. Okay, appreciate that. So why did your day suck, John? Before I get into a game that took me 8 months to get to the end of.
So, listener, I work in a pharmacy. You probably know that. And when I walked in to my pharmacy today, I actually manage a pharmacy, and I walked into my pharmacy today. Like I've got 3 phone lines, and the phone lines were lit up, which means that, you know, to me there's somebody on the phone, and that's fine, that's normal. And then I went over to my computer and I started the program that we used to do all of our prescription processing, like everything. The whole pharmacy runs on this one program, and I tried to start it, and it gave me a server error. And our servers are located in the pharmacy. And the phone lines didn't shut off. So we've got an automatic system that allows people to order things without actually talking to somebody if they just punch in some numbers. And normally when somebody calls in and the phones light up, they're usually using that system, not necessarily talking to somebody, right? So the phones never stopped being lit up, and I was like, you know what, our phones are down. Like this isn't normal. So not only is my server down, so I cannot actually do the pharmacy right now, I also do not have a phone with which to call. So
Good.
I called my help desk from my cell phone, and I was like, I am in kind of a bind. I can't do anything. And meanwhile, people are calling the main store and asking for the pharmacy because they cannot call into the pharmacy directly. So that's fun. So that was my morning. It took about an hour to fix. And in the pharmacy, work is front loaded, like heavily front loaded. So the first 6 to 7 hours of my day are definitely the busiest, when I see the most people, because doctors' offices are open, that's when I'm getting the most prescriptions, that kind of thing. And then it tends to taper off a little bit after that towards the evening when it gets much quieter. So I had no computers, I had no ability to answer phones for like the first part of the busiest part of my day. And it literally put me behind for the entire rest of the day, which was brutal. So it was one of those days where I constantly felt like I was playing catch up, which is not ever. And you know, as somebody in pharmacy, one, I'm in healthcare, but I'm also in customer service. And listener, if you're in customer service at all, which you know, many customers, you know that like shit goes wrong at your job sometimes, not your fault. And oftentimes you will get in my case, patients, but you'll get customers that are understanding when there are technical difficulties. But I specifically had some customers that were not understanding technical difficulties, and that's very frustrating because I am already very stressed out about the situation, trying to kind of play damage control. But on top of that, to have people impatiently tell me how hard it is to wait for slightly longer was very frustrating, right? So that was kind of the position I was in this morning until the computers got fixed. And then, and that's not even the worst part of the day. The worst part of the day is that once the computers were fixed, basically everything that had occurred over the course of the evening errored out in the computer system, and so it all had to be reprocessed. Anything that happened overnight had to be reprocessed. So there were about 40 prescriptions we had to hand process after that, and it was just consuming, incredibly time consuming, and it took a long time. Days. Oh my god! And it was the second, and of course it's the second of my 2 12-hour shifts, which this is the day that I am normally like the most dead at work anyway, because I've worked. This is my 6th day in a row that I've worked, and my second of 2 consecutive 12-hour days. So like I was already slightly exhausted just going into work, and then that happened, and it was like, oh my god, I don't know. It was a mess. It was a mess.
Still, I have an incredible.
Yeah, that was why my was.
Yeah, I have an incredible amount of respect for pharmacists because, you're like doctors basically. I mean, pretty much, like, and you don't have to do like 10 years of school, but you have to do a lot of them. You're pretty much doctors, and you also have to deal with people's crap. You know, like at the doctor's office, they have the people that like admit people, and you wait, and then whatever, and the doctors just like see the people when they're ready. But you guys, like, that's tough.
Yeah, I mean, I am a doctor of pharmacy. That is my title.
Right. But you also have to deal with people. And that's, like, to me, I just have so much respect for pharmacists. As someone who has to utilize... someone has to utilize pharmacies on a somewhat regular basis, I always...
Yeah, you're dying slowly, I mean, so that's true.
We all are, though, aren't we? I mean, right.
Well, I guess... I say that when I say you're dying slowly, I mean, I guess that means you're like faster than the average person.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, there's that. So there's that. And am I cutting out a lot on your end? Because you are a
No.
lot on my end, but okay. But I'm okay with you cutting out on my end because I'm not that interested in what you have to say.
Okay.
So there's that. So yeah,
That's fair.
listener, a little behind the scenes. John and I are not in the same room right now. We actually do this over the internet using the power of technology. Thanks, Obama,
Mm-hmm.
for that.
Goes really well.
So cool. Well, my day was also awful for more personal reasons that I really won't get into. Let's just say, I've been on the dating scene longer than I'd like to be. I'm ready to lock something down, and it's not happening. And it's getting a little frustrating because there are people my age, i.e., Jonathan Martin, who have babies now, and other friends of mine who are married or in very serious relationships and are getting married. Once you get in your late 20s, listener, you may be in college, you may be in high school, you may be younger. I strongly urge you to find somebody when you're young and just hang on to them because it's just easier, probably that way. So there's that. And I started a new job last Friday, so it's going great. Everyone's super nice, but it's a huge change of pace. So like that's tough to adjust to. So a lot of life changes and things like that.
So how's the demographic at your job now? Like at your last job, it was mostly people your age and a little bit younger, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah, this job totally different. It's all over the place. Probably the 8 or 9 people in my immediate area are pretty much my age, but a lot of people on my floor are older, 10 to 15 to maybe 20 years older.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of all over the place. I would say
definitely more like established careers.
Yeah, I would say I'm on the younger side. I would say mid-20s would be the youngest people there, and there aren't many that I know of. So
that's a good place to be, though.
Yeah, I thought so. So it's fine. It's fine. I have this big fancy corporate job, hence the short hair and all that stuff. So it's good.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what we at Unqualified Gamers have been up to. Have you done anything fun lately to lighten the mood a little bit? No?
Nope.
Nothing?
There has been literally zero fun. Did I do anything fun? Did anything fun over the weekend? I had friends over. That's what happened over the weekend.
Oh, that's good.
We had Nick and Kristen over. Nick is a guy who usually goes to Gen Con with us every year. He did not make it this year, but he and his wife came over to the house. And, yeah, you know what? We watched the Grand Budapest Hotel, that Wes Anderson film.
Yeah, I definitely know who Wes Anderson is. The guy that did Friday the 13th. Or Dracula.
Royal Tenenbaums is probably his most famous movie.
Wes Anderson's New Nightmare was a Freddy the Krueger movie.
You swung for it. It was good. So no, it wasn't that movie. So we watched the Grand Budapest Hotel, and that was awesome. It was a great movie, and that was it. That was the big highlight of the weekend.
Cool.
Otherwise, no, nothing fun.
All right. I will not get into excessive detail, but I went to Distant Worlds music from Final Fantasy.
Is that a party with 16-year-olds?
It is not.
Isn't it? No, that's not true. There were 16-year-olds there.
There probably were.
Don't lie to me.
Okay, so I went to that. It's another Final Fantasy themed concert. It is the 6th one they have done in Chicago and the 5th one I have attended in Chicago. I missed one in college.
I feel like every other week we're talking about a Final Fantasy concert that you went to. Seriously.
I do go to a lot.
You go to all of them.
I go to a lot, so I'm really into it. But
right.
This one especially because this one was celebrating the 20th anniversary of Final Fantasy VI,
mm-hmm.
which I realized during the show, and I just wanted to bring it up because I realized during the show I have a stronger emotional connection to that game than any form of media or any piece of media I think that exists.
To Final Fantasy VI specifically?
Yes, specifically Final Fantasy VI. There is, I don't think, any video game or book or movie that I have a stronger emotional connection with.
That's definitely the power of nostalgia that makes you feel that way.
Yeah, oh yeah, absolutely. And I'm not saying it's for one reason or another. I just that's the one. That is the
That's pretty cool.
The thing you play during your formative years that just gets you, you know?
Yep.
And I think it's just the writing and the characters and the complexity of the storyline and the opera scene. My God, the opera scene and just everything about it. It is actually Arnie Roth, the conductor, mentioned at one point between songs that once they finished the game, one of the developers said, "This is the best game in the universe." Actually, and I think maybe at the time it was. It is a near perfect game in so many ways.
For me now, I play those games of my childhood like that, and especially like the ones that had the biggest influence on me, they totally transport me back to like being in my bedroom upstairs in my old house, like playing games on a Saturday morning, that kind of thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think that's what it is for me.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I would sit in the basement on the floor in front of the little TV and the video game cabinet, and that was just, that was like innocence, man. Like childhood, man. But it was, it's
Man.
like that's the time in your life when everything was fine, like life was just really good, and you were just taken care of, and
Life's good now. It's just less simple.
it's just quite a lot less simple. So yeah, it just struck such a chord. I teared up after every piece they played. They relegated all of the Final Fantasy VI music to the second half. They opened with the hymn from Final Fantasy X.
Mm-hmm.
And if you've never been to Symphony Center, so there's the stage. So Symphony Center is where the Chicago Symphony Orchestra performs in Chicago. They've got the stage, obviously, and then so above the stage, probably like 100 feet above the stage, they have a kind of balcony that wraps around the back of the stage, and it's got like 5 or 6 rows that go across the whole balcony, and that's for the full choir when they have a full choir. They didn't have a full choir for this, but so if the CSO does a huge piece like Brahms' Requiem or something, they'll have the orchestra on the main stage and then the choir kind of lining around the top of it. And then right behind where the choir sits, lining the back of the stage wall, is a giant pipe organ.
Mm-hmm.
So for the very opening, they had 2 vocalists on either side of the balcony, one male and one female, and they just started singing the hymn, the like, that one from Final Fantasy X, and it was just, you could hear a pin drop in the place. It was really good. It was the perfect opener. It was the perfect opener. And then from there they played a lot of standard repertoire that I've seen at other Final Fantasy concerts I won't get into, and they decided to stick all of the Final Fantasy VI music into the second half. They had a couple of premieres, but did a lot of old stuff. Not like a lot of old stuff, but they did some that they've done before. They had like a mini character medley that only consisted of Terra's theme, Celis's theme, Locke's theme, and I want to say Kefka's theme, actually, oddly.
Makes sense.
Yeah, we were a little disappointed they didn't do like the whole ending medley, which is 25 minutes of every theme song, but what can you do?
But that's forever.
Yeah,
is the thing.
Yeah. So that was nice, and they also did they did the very end. So after that 25-minute medley at the ending scene, when they get in the airship and they start flying around and the credits roll, the staff credits.
Yeah.
They did that song, the kind of victorious kind of airship.
Or was that like the finale?
No, the finale. So the last piece they did was, I don't remember. I mean, they did the opera.
Was it Dancing Mad?
No, they did Dancing Mad was, I think, second piece they did in the second half.
Okay.
Dancing Mad, they had a soloist on the pipe organ. Oh my God.
That song is fantastic.
And the entire third movement is just pipe organ.
Yeah.
So if you've never played the game for whatever reason, listener, Final Fantasy VI, the final boss before Kefka is 3 stages, and it's this...
it's a big tower.
It's a big tower, and it's organ music that plays a different tune, kind of, with an orchestra on each stage. The third stage is just the pipe organ. I've heard the song arranged before where they end at the third stage, but they rolled into Kefka's theme at the end of it. But for like 3 minutes, the organist was just going, and those pipes at the CSO Symphony Center, just like really cool. So that was actually probably the highlight for me. Usually I thought it was going to be the opera, because the last time I saw the opera, I had several beers in me, and I sobbed when it was over. I just completely fell apart and lost it. Didn't do that to me this time. Like I said, still teared up a little bit. I don't remember what they closed with.
My dirty little secret, I'm not terribly fond of the opera.
Really?
Really, yeah. As far as music goes in that game, that is not like in my top 5.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, it never clicked with me.
That's fair. I mean, it's whatever. And like I said, I like Dancing Mad more, this arrangement. So that was just awesome. So it was great. If Final Fantasy, Distant Worlds ever comes to where you are, please go. And they just released a CD of the chamber music, which is a new world intimate music from Final Fantasy. I reviewed that on a podcast when I went to Anime Central in April, so you can check that out on unqualifiedgamers.com. But they've released a CD now, so you can get the chamber music, which is very exciting.
Did they happen to do Atma Weapons theme?
They did not.
That is one of my favorite songs in that whole game.
And see, I was never particularly fond of that one.
Oh, I freaking love that song. It's so good.
Now they did, and the one other thing I do want to mention, they did Dark World. So when I went to A New World, the intimate music concert, Nobuo Uematsu gets on the organ, and Arnie Roth, the conductor, gets his violin out, and they both perform. And then they were accompanied at some point by some of the chamber orchestra. Mm-hmm. They did it with the full orchestra, and I have goosebumps just thinking about it. Like, it's unreal. So if that's on any albums, check out Dark World from Final Fantasy VI. Any arrangement is ridiculous.
Right, that's pretty cool.
So yeah, it was really good. It was nice. It was not the Chicago Symphony performing like I thought it was going to be, but it was still good. And hey, speaking of good music and Square Enix, which does the concert series, they also did a medley from Final Fantasy 13, and I really didn't care for it. Which is a shame, because I love the music from that series.
Yeah, the music in that game is fantastic.
I love the music in that game. Lightning Returns, I was going to say, is one of the best soundtracks I thought from last year. But, yeah, I didn't care for the arrangement, oddly. It's kind of disappointing, but whatever. So there's that. But, yeah, hey, Square Enix, good music. What does that make it think of? Does it make it think of the Nintendo 3DS? Is there Nintendo 3DS on the camera? Or is it? The audio listeners are going to love that.
That's not.
Yes,
it doesn't make me think of that. It makes me think of old Super Nintendo games when you talk about Square Enix and good music, yeah.
Oh, well, hey, shut up. That's what I have to say about that. Do you want to hear about Bravely Default?
I'm glad you finally beat it, so maybe you can...
I haven't beaten it.
I'm glad... I just want it to be over. I just want it to be over.
I'm literally at the final boss. Like, literally. If I open it, I think I'm in the middle of fighting... Oh, no, I'm not. I'm in the final... I saved in the final dungeon. But
okay.
I did it. I attempted the final boss twice today. I will beat it in the next couple of days.
And it went well, is what you're saying. The final boss went well.
Yeah, obviously, because I only fought him twice, and obviously died both times, so it's going really well.
Okay, good. Yeah. Is it that kind of death where, like, you get rolled, or do you feel like you're making progress?
Depends on my job setup. I have changed my job class setup a couple times. I did a lot of progress in my first attempt, and then I tried to tweak my system, and I got rolled pretty hard, like 3 times.
Yeah.
So, Jonathan gave a general overview of the combat system for the game when he did his kind of miniature review back in like December or January.
Yeah, back when the game first came out.
Sure, which is when I got it, of course.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So go to unqualifiedgamers.com and just search for Bravely Default if you want to find that, or check out our YouTube channel. It's also on YouTube. So Jonathan goes over the combat system. To briefly skim it over, basically the deal is you have a battle point. If you defend on your turn, you get a battle point. If you use your attack, you use the battle point. And you can also use a brave attack, which means you can attack up to 4 times per turn, which costs
or there's
one.
There's some abilities that use multiple battle points.
Or there's some abilities that use multiple battle points, and that depletes your battle points. So you can default to game battle points, or brave to deplete battle points, or just kind of normal attack. If you just do a normal attack every turn, it just breaks even. So because you accumulate a battle point automatically at the end of each turn. And the enemies also
you will never succeed at playing the game if you do not defend some turns. Like, you cannot attack every turn and be successful at the game. It just doesn't work.
Because you can go up to -4 battle points, but if you do that, then every turn until you get back up to 1, so 4 turns, your character is just useless.
Right.
So he's not defending, he's just standing there. So that's not good. So, yeah, and you can accumulate up to 3 battle points extra with certain abilities, certain like equipment and things like that, and you know, you can accumulate up to that much and then spend them how you like. So that's the shtick. It paces the battle system. The enemies obey that combat system as well. It, I think, often lengthens the length of a battle. I think your dog is trying to escape for its dear life or something in the background, by the way.
Well, we put in the hardwood floors, and the dog's nails do click a little bit more on hardwood than they do on carpet. So
right,
it could
okay.
be the dog, and my wife just went through to grab some food out of the kitchen. So, of course, where there is food, there is dog.
That's true.
And that's kind of what happened there.
That's true. Okay, so that's the battle system of Bravely Default. In terms of a role-playing game, it functions exactly like Final Fantasy. They name the spells Fire and Fyra and Fyraga. To cure blind, you use eye drops. Echo herbs cure silence. Things like that. So all the items have the same names. Potion.
I mean, the game, to me, the game like was a Final Fantasy game.
It pretty much is.
It is.
It's like if you dialed it back to like Final. It's like if they had made Final Fantasy 3, not 6, but 3, the original, as a new game today, it would be this, because it has evolutions and new features that are really cool. That I won't get super.
I mean, the surname part, the tag for the Japanese game was Bravely Default Flying Fairy, which is FF, which is the same as Final Fantasy. I mean, like, they leaned into it.
Yeah.
As a company.
Yeah, they definitely did, and it's actually Bravely Default Flying Fairy in the U.S. as well.
Right.
Which actually plays into something. So, with that in mind, the 4 characters are Tiz, Ringabel, Adia, and Agnes. I think they're really entertaining. At first, I thought they were very generic, as you did. I think that they really grow on you. They really have very distinct personalities. Ringabel has a fun back and forth with everybody. Adia has a really fun back and forth with everybody. They become very distinct by the end of the game, and that is fun. So it's very nice. So even by mid-game, you know, they kind of grow on you, and I even liked the voice acting after a while as well. So that's that. Now let's talk about the structure of the game. This is going to include spoilers, so if you've not played the game, you may not want to listen. But there's a lot of commotion and hubbub about the end game of this game. Jamie Butterworth, one of our fellow gamers at large, network, I guess, members, he took a lot of issue with the near end of the game, as did several other members, actually, of the network. And I have discovered why that is. So, Jonathan, you have played the first 3.5 chapters, right?
The final chapter I got to was where we were. Everyone was like moving towards Adia's. We were at Adia's hometown. We had just passed through it, and we were going to get the water crystal at that point, I want to say.
Oh, so you're still in chapter 3 then.
Whatever one is in the snowy area.
That's actually the Earth Crystal, ironically.
I feel like it was chapter 4.
That's chapter 4. You were
Earth Crystal.
at the Earth
No, that's where we were. It was the Earth Crystal.
Okay.
Yes.
So also a throwback to Final Fantasy games. So the original Final Fantasy was about collecting the crystals, right? I think.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember the storyline in that game very well.
It was.
They brought back the crystals in Final Fantasy 2, and I'm not sure about 3, but they definitely did in 4, where you have the light and dark crystals.
There were crystals in 3 and 4.
Yeah,
and 5.
They've even, as recently as Final Fantasy 13, they use them in a different way. But one of the main characters, Lightning's sister, is crystallized, and like becoming a crystal is a thing that happens. So crystals are a very underlying theme in the Final Fantasy series, and that's displayed just outright central storyline in Bravely Default, which is another reason why people consider it pretty much a Final Fantasy game. Pretty basic story. The world is in chaos or whatever. The seas don't have any tides. The wind stopped blowing, so you must awaken the 4 elemental crystals. Simple, right? Chapter 1 of the game, well, there's a prologue where you kind of learn about this cataclysm. Tiz's hometown is destroyed. There's a big crater. That sucks. Okay, you meet all your friends. That's a prologue, okay? Chapter 1, awaken the wind crystal. Get the winds to blow again. Great, cool. Chapter 2, awaken the water crystal so you can sail across the water. Great, cool, got the water crystal. Chapter 3 is the fire crystal, which actually doesn't do anything. It's in a volcano, but that's not even active, so that's weird. And then number 4 is the Earth Crystal, which is being used in a different way that's kind of creative and innovative, which I kind of like. So they're harvesting that crystal, kind of like Mako Reactor in Final Fantasy VII, just kind of like sucking its energy out for industrial purposes, in this case medical purposes.
Okay.
So that's chapter 4, and then presumably at the end of chapter 4, once you have awakened all 4 crystals, a pillar of light appears, and you enter that pillar to seal the great chasm that has appeared, and then probably fight some final boss, right? Or maybe there's some little twist.
Yeah, that's the end of the game. That sounds like a great arc.
How many chapters do you think are in this game?
So you just went through 4 chapters, and then that last chapter should be a 5th chapter. So I would think 5. I would think 4, and then plus a nice little like wrap-up chapter. You know, chapter 5 could be like optional bosses in the final dungeon. Like, doesn't that sound reasonable?
Yeah, and there may be 6 chapters. You know, maybe there's one other kind of tie it all together before.
Yeah, maybe there's like a storyline chapter that leads into the final dungeon chapter. But then the final dungeon chapter would have to just be the final chapter.
Sure, it would be abbreviated for sure, right? So that's what one would think would happen. So this is where the spoilers begin.
Mm-hmm.
Apologize in advance to everybody but John, who is dying to know about this. There are 9 chapters. Okay?
That seems like a lot.
Okay, well, it's really going to seem like a lot when you find out what they are. One other important thing that I have to mention before talking about Chapter 5 is that there's a job system in this game. We've discussed it. In order to acquire a new job, you must you must acquire the asterisk, which is a stone, the asterisk for that job. So, if you want to become a thief, you have to defeat the thief who holds the asterisk, and then you can be a thief. You accumulate these jobs throughout the progress of the game. One of the first ones you fight is a white mage. You defeat the evil white mage, you get her asterisk, you have the white mage in your party. So there are about 16, maybe, I want to say 15 to 20 jobs with bosses who hold asterisks. And again, throughout the game you collect these asterisks. You know, white mage, black mage, red mage, spell fencer, thief, samurai, ninja, all that stuff. So, cool. They're, for the most part, actually optional, but you don't really skip them. I mean, they're pretty much not optional, right? Like, you need a black mage.
Right.
So this is a very important thing to mention. So in addition to fighting the 4 big bad bosses that you do in each temple, because of course, before you awaken a crystal, you have to fight a monster, there are also about 20 other bosses.
Of course you do. Yeah,
there are also about 20 other bosses in the game that hold asterisks. So when you get to Chapter 5, actually, the game actually has a kind of a throwback to Chrono Trigger. The very opening of the game is a gentleman actually saying, good morning, Tiz," who is the main character, and you wake up in Narende, which is near your hometown, which is now obliterated because there's a chasm. Okay, so there's that little throwback to Good Morning Chrono in Chrono Trigger. Well, Chapter 5 begins with, so Chapter 4 ends with you enter the Holy Pillar, the airship's trying to hold together, oh my gosh, everything goes white out. Chapter 5 begins with, good morning, Tiz, and you wake up in Narende. And you think, okay, so we awaken the crystals, we enter the Holy Pillar, is the chasm closed? You run outside, you look outside, chasm's not closed, you look around, the sea stopped, and there's no wind blowing. And okay, that's kind of weird. So your party regroups. You all remember each other. You're like, hey, that was weird. What just happened? Why are we all back here? And no one remembers you. And you exit.
It's like a different world, but you guys are all there.
Yeah. So you exit to the main map, and whenever there's a boss with an asterisk, they are denoted on the main map with a blue exclamation point, and the temples or your destination locations are denoted with a yellow exclamation point. In Chapter 5, you go to the main map, and literally every asterisk has returned to the main map, as well as all 4 of the crystals. You must reawaken all 4 of the crystals. You've got an airship, so this is fine. You can just fly straight to the temples. It's fine. Fight straight to one temple,
Okay.
fight the boss, awaken the crystals, straight to the other. As an optional boss, you can go refight the asterisk bosses, and they have different dialogue. They're different characters. Some of them aren't as mean as they were in the first world. So you're basically in a parallel world where you have to reawaken the 4 crystals, and you can optionally refight every asterisk bear. Okay. I'll just continue.
Okay.
So you get to the end of chapter
What's
5.
the story?
The story is you don't know what's going on. You're like, well, Aerie is your fairy companion. She's like the Navi of the group, and Aerie.
And it's like I got this mini map, and it says I got to do this stuff, so I should go do this stuff because the mini map says so.
Well, she's like, I don't know what happened. I have a really high voice. We awakened the crystals. I don't know what went wrong. We'll just have to awaken them again. So you have to go awaken them again. So that's the idea, this kind of thing. Also, at this point, Ringabel, the character in your party, had lost his memory at the beginning of the game. And at this point, he is starting to get some of his memories back, and you start to learn a little bit about him. And things got very interesting in Chapter 5. Because when you entered that pillar and you woke up, I was like, oh, that's weird. Like, I have to go refight things, and some of the characters are different, and Ringabel's got some memories, and like this is interesting. It was legitimately interesting. Chapter 5, I was like, this is an interesting twist. I don't know where it's going. I'm excited to see where it goes. Cool. I awaken all 4. So, as a not a completionist, I'm not like a completionist. I have to get every item, but when you see 10 exclamation points on your mini map, you want to clear them, right? In that way, I'm a bit of a completionist. So I go fight all the asterisk guys. They're a lot stronger now too, like a lot stronger. I had to grind. I'll get to the grinding later. I had to grind. I beat them all. Beat all 4 of the crystal bosses. Re-entered the Holy Pillar. All right, cool. Let's re-enter the Holy Pillar. Let's do it. That's Chapter 5. Chapter 6 begins. Good morning, Tiz. And you're in another parallel world where none of the crystals have been awakened, and all of the asterisk bearers are back on the map. Yeah.
Are you serious?
I'm
like
dead serious.
All 20 again?
Yes. Yes. With more, sometimes their locations are moved slightly. The crystals are always in the same place with the same boss, but the asterisk bearers is slightly moved, a couple of them, and certain events don't trigger the same way. Like when you go to the village that's kind of embroiled in a war, there's usually a dinner scene where an asterisk bearer kind of ambushes. That's no longer there. You find them in another tower, basically. So if you have moved, overall kind of the same, and a couple have actually teamed up. So there's like maybe if you fought 2 in close proximity in the first and second world, in this third world, like they're just gonna fight you together. So okay, that's a little interesting. Cool. So that's Chapter 6. So cool. I fight all the asterisk bearers in Chapter 6. Go back, fight all the 4 of the crystal monsters, reawaken all the crystals.
At this point, is it feeling tedious at all?
A little bit.
Okay.
So get to the end of Chapter 6, and there's an extra reason for that I'll get into in a little bit. Get to the end of Chapter 6, awaken all 4 crystals. Boom. You are all set. You enter the Holy Pillar. Chapter 7 begins. Good morning, Tiz. And all 4 crystals are no longer awoken. There are fewer exclamation points on the map. At this point, you're now fighting the asterisk bearers 2 to 3 at a time. I think maybe 4 at a time even in some cases, but mostly 3 at a time. So fighting them in groups, which means they're much harder because they're still very strong and they're very challenging. All right? So there's that. So I fight all of the optional bosses. Again, this is now not counting the first 4 chapters. I fought them in 5 already and in 6. This is now Chapter 7. So I've now beaten them 3 times in addition to the original time. So cool, beat all them and reawaken the crystals. And I'm sure you're ahead of me by this point, but Chapter 8 is Good Morning, Tiz. And it is a 4 parallel world.
How long are we talking that it takes you to get through these chapters?
Well, I'll get to that in 1 second. In Chapter 8, all of the bosses you fight 4 at a time. And they are hard. They are legitimately tough. There's even a couple fights where once you defeat one of them, another one will step in and replace them immediately. So you're really fighting 5, just 4 at a time, and then you have to like whittle them down from there. So they're very challenging. There was one that was incredibly hard that I had to use. I had to summon a lot of my friends, which is the Street Pass thing. I'm gonna get into that in a minute too. So chapter 8 was the shortest chapter in terms of travel time because there's only like 6 exclamation points, 4 or 5 maybe actually even. So there aren't that many places to go. You just need to fight the battles when you get there, and you have to fight all 4 crystal bosses again. Great. Now at the end of chapter 8, this does not repeat in chapter 9, but at this point you have awoken the crystals 20 times, and that does play into the storyline. They explain why and some things that aren't necessary to spoil, so I won't. In terms of how long it takes for all these chapters, here's the thing about Bravely Default. By the time I was getting to the 3-person battles, it takes me, when I get on the train to go to work in the morning, it's about a half-hour ride, maybe 35 minutes, give or take. Sometimes 30, sometimes 40, depends. Sometimes 25 if it's fast. But about a half hour, right? I would start a battle immediately upon getting on the train, and I wouldn't have finished the battle by the time I got to my destination. Because the battles would take, or I would just be finished. Like, because the battles would take 20 minutes or 30 minutes because of all the braving and defaulting you have to do, and strategery, and buffing your characters and debuffing their characters, and timing attacks and things like that. So there was a point where a lot of strategy was involved, which is perfect for a game with a job system. Like, really perfect. Because you want to be forced to play around with these jobs. You want to be forced to have to readjust your strategy and customize it. And, oh, I had a magic attack user in this party, but like I really need characters focused on buffing my party because these opponents are debuffing me. So I rearranged my party several times in order to beat these. And in some cases, with the 4-person battles near the end, I had to start summoning friends, which I'll get into in a second. Because unless I used like an overpowered attack, there was no way I was going to beat them, naturally. So the difficulty is very, very high. Keep in mind also, this is coming from a guy who played and beat Shovel Knight without realizing that you can pause the game to change the item you're using from your inventory. So I'm not what you would call necessarily really good at video games. So there's that. I'm not awful at this game, but I'm certainly no expert at shuffling around these job classes. But this is where people were understandably unhappy about the game, because you play 4 chapters, and that feels like a good game to you. 20, 30 hours, whatever, maybe 40. And then you basically fight all the bosses again for chapter 5, and then you do it again for chapter 6.
You do the same thing 4 times in a row, over and over again, 4 times in a row.
After the original game, essentially. Now, again, I fought every asterisk boss because I felt like it, because I'm OCD about clearing those exclamation points from my map. And they were fun. They did get progressively more fun, and by chapter 4, by chapter 8, when you saw the interactions between these characters, because you're approaching them 4 at a time, their cutscenes just got really ludicrous. Like, the red mage is a philanderer, and the red mage is paired with 3 of the female asterisk bearers, so like he's like basically harassing them, and they're all just giving him crap and making fun of him and stuff. So it gets really funny. The dialogue takes some fun twists and turns, and they keep it interesting for what it is. There is repetition. There is certainly repetition. You're certainly fighting the same bosses. But Square Enix does a damn good job of keeping it interesting and challenging. And I played this on hard mode, by the way, so I guess I should get a little credit for that. I beat it on hard mode. So yeah. I don't know time-wise how long it was taking for me to beat these chapters. I'm at 74 hours now at the end of the game, I want to say. 73 hours and 40 minutes. This is on top of dying several times, so probably closer to 80 hours in playtime. 73 hours, like I said, I was at somewhere between 30 and 40 after the first 4 chapters, so
Right.
figure about 10 hours a chapter beyond the first 4. Actually, in general,
Wow.
there was 9 chapters. I'm at 73, so an average of 8 hours a chapter. 8 times... What is that? 8 times 9 is 73. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So...
72.
Well, sure. Close enough. So, yeah. So, they keep it interesting, and they keep it good. Obviously, I can understand why some people have problems with it, because it is very repetitive in a way. The other thing is, when you street pass people in this game, or when you save the game and select Update Friends from the save menu, that connects to Wi-Fi and pulls in 4 random friends. So you could be in North Dakota where nobody lives, nobody has a 3DS, and you can just update friends from the internet, and it'll pull in friends. So don't worry if you're in a rural area, it's fine. When you street pass or pull in friends, you're able to summon them in battle to use an attack that they send via their 3DS. So, for example,
Right.
During a battle, I can use Tiz's Limit Break, and I can select Send, use the Limit Break, and then he throws up a little pendant, and it disappears, and anybody I street pass, when they summon it, Tiz will use that Limit Break and do roughly the same amount of damage that I just did with him. This can go up to 6 figures. That means 999,999. I actually street passed 2. I got 2 data sets that did 999,999 damage. And actually, when
you cannot do that with your own party. Is that correct?
I have no idea how to do that with my party. No idea. So,
Okay.
well, here's another thing. You can do up to 9,999 damage when you're playing the game with any attack. Cool? Okay, so that's the cap, 9999, just like any Final Fantasy game, up through like 10 or something. All right, that's normal. There is a feature in the game called Bravely Second. And this is a little bit controversial. Bravely Second, if you hit Start or Select, it freezes the battle, no matter if the opponent's attacking or what. It freezes the battle and allows you to select any character to use any move that they have available at that time, including summoning friends, to use any move at that time, and that will can surpass that damage limit. So the way these people are sending 999,999 damage is they're presumably going to a low-level enemy, finding its weakness, and just using a ludicrously overpowered attack on it to cause that amount of damage, and then they're also sending that attack. So that makes sense how they do that. I could do that much damage, but probably not with a regular attack on like a final boss or anything. I'd probably have to send it from fighting a low-level monster. Does that make sense?
Yes.
That's a little convoluted.
Yes. No, I get it though.
Now, Bravely Second is powered by SP, which I don't know what that stands for. Doesn't matter. SP are accumulated by keeping your game asleep for 8 hours, and you get 1 SP.
I believe they're called sleep points.
Are they sleep points?
Yes.
You can find out right now. I'm actually going to check right now. It just says SP drinks, so I don't know what that means. Anyway, but you can get these SP drinks. Now, you can get up to 3 SP. To accumulate an SP, your game must be asleep for 8 hours. And then when you wake it up, if I leave it for 24 hours, I'll have 3 SP. Maybe it's 12, 8 or 12, doesn't matter. And remember, this is the only way to do more than 9,999 damage other than summoning a friend. Or you can purchase an SP drink, which replenishes your SP, using your Wi-Fi connection for real money to Square Enix. Were you aware of this?
I was.
So
I was doing that for dramatic effect.
I believe some of the discontent with this game is the feeling that if you have to plow through 50 or 60 extra bosses, or you choose to, or whatever, and you want to do it somewhat quickly, a really fast way of doing that is removing the damage cap so that you can do ludicrous amounts of damage on these bosses per attack. And in order to do that, you need to pay money. So essentially it becomes a bit of a slow grind for an end game unless you spend money.
You pay to win.
Now, I did not experience this issue. I found ways around that. Again, when I got to the 4-person battles in Chapter 8, I would often summon a friend that did 58,000 damage with one attack. And you don't need to use Bravely Second in order to surpass the damage cap if you're summoning a friend. So I would do that a few times. So there is a way around it, and you can update that friend data and get 4 new friends, I think every 24 hours or something, but basically once a day it works. So you can get that pretty quickly. Now again, this is part of why it took me 8 months to beat this game, because a month ago or 2 months ago I was done with Chapter 4, and then all of a sudden I had 4 more chapters to do, where I redid Chapters 1 through 4 4 times. So that's how that works. So, and I know I'm getting kind of granular with a lot of this, but I think it's important to understand all of the context of everything to kind of get a feel for all this. I didn't think it was necessary. I found a combo, and here's a pro tip for you. I combined Samurai or Bushido or whatever the class is with Pirate. Samurai or Bushido or whatever it is has a move that I don't remember what it's called, but it reduces the magic point cost of all your attacks to 0 for 2 turns. The Pirate has an ability called Amped Strike, which deals 4 times the damage of a normal attack in one attack. It normally costs about 300 magic points to use. So what I would do is I would collect 3 battle points. I would brave 4 times. So with my first attack, I would use this 0 MP cost attack, and with the remaining 3 attacks, I would use Amped Strike. And that consistently did 9,999 damage, because I would also have a pirate in the party that would lower the opponent's physical defense, and a singer in the party, or bard, who would up my party's physical attack. So I buffed my physical attack, debuffed the opponent's physical defense, and then would use one move where I used 3 amp strikes, and then a second time, because after you use your 4 with the brave points, you're at 0. You can then brave 4 times to go to -4 brave points and do max damage on each of those 4. So that's 7 attacks, that's 70,000 damage in 2 turns. Chapter 4, the bosses are really challenging, but I believe they lowered the max HP for some of the bosses. I know they did in Chapter 7. So they would only have like 100,000 or maybe 120,000. So basically, if I just set up and teed off, I could take these guys out pretty quickly. That was my strategy. Again, there's lots of different ways to play this game, which is cool. But, it got somewhat repetitive. Someone's got to be kind of obsessive, and it doesn't. To you, or a lot of other people, it probably doesn't sound that fun. I find satisfaction, extreme satisfaction, in just completing things, in just knowing, like, I destroyed Chapter 5, I mastered Chapter 6, I obliterated Chapter 7, I maxed out Chapter 8, boom, I have done everything in this game, hit Chapter 9, hit with the ground running, and then go to the final dungeon. Like, that's how I operate. And sometimes in order to get there, you've got to do some more tedious, more repetitive stuff. It was grating on me at times, but sometimes when they switched up those battles and I got rolled by the opponent, I'd be like, oh, dude, I got to recustomize my whole party. Let's see what new tricks I can find and experiment with to get past this opponent. And that was really fun.
Oh, for sure. The party building aspect of this game is the game. I mean, that's the same reason why I've talked about why Final Fantasy V is such a great game for me. Is that it's the customization of your party possibilities is like endless. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. I think this game is intended to be played over. I think this game is best played over a long period of time. And that can be a little frustrating in a role-playing game where you're enjoying a story and you want to know the end of the story. It's like when you're reading a book. You don't get halfway through the book and then slowly read. You get to that point in the book where you can't put it down, right? A good book. this is like that because the battle system's so good. It's like a good book. You want to keep playing it. You want to keep consuming it, and it's really compelling. But then there's so much of it, and sometimes it slows down a bit, and it just...
Yeah.
So I don't hate this game. I will probably never play it again. I think the replay value is incredibly low, like unbelievably low, because you're essentially...
Well, considering that you're essentially replaying the game 4 times over the course of the game.
Exactly. It's like you're not even New Game Plusing. I don't hate this game. I don't think that you're forced to buy SP drinks. I think that maybe players that are a little less creative with their job builds, or less patient, or rich, I don't know. There is an audience for it, and you may not be that audience, but I don't think it's a necessary thing, personally. Again, you can't be one-shot killing every opponent, but I don't think it was that debilitating. Right. The other thing is, this was interesting. I think I mentioned to you maybe even, when you get to Chapter 5, all of the enemies are substantially stronger. So I had the game on hard mode. I had my battles. You can adjust your rate of enemy encounters at any point in the game. You just open the menu. You can make it 0%, so you're not encountering any enemies at any point in the game. You can do this from the first battle. The start of the game, you can set it this way. Or you can double the rate of enemy encounters, so like every 2 steps you're getting into a battle, which is nice for grinding, so you don't have to run around forever waiting for enemies to attack you, right? I had my battle setting set at standard for the vast majority, actually pretty much all of the first 4 chapters. Got to Chapter 5, I was getting beaten by regular opponents in, like, basic dungeons. They were just destroying me. So I found a spot to grind. And I G-chatted with you about this. I think I mentioned this. I found a spot to grind, and I was like level 50 or 60 or so. I found a spot to grind. I had Adia, the Black Mage. I equipped some abilities that allowed her to group cast single target spells. So when I used Doom on every target. I upped the hell out of her magic stats. I gave her some stuff that reduced the amount of magic she exuded per battle, and every battle I just put on auto battle and had her cast death on everyone, and it worked 90% of the time. So I kind of ran around in circles doing that for, like, I mean, at the point when I was texting you, it was ridiculous, right? Wasn't it like, didn't I gain like 8 levels in 10 minutes or something? Or like 12 minutes or something?
I think I asked you if you were having fun, and I think you said no.
I might have.
But you did continue to do it. Yeah.
The nice thing about the game, the whole control design, you can actually play the entire game with one hand, which is generally a joke reserved for Dead or Alive Extreme Beach Volleyball, but it's legitimately, they map the L button, and you can hit left and right for confirm and go back in menus. So it's designed specifically so you can one-hand it. I was one-handing on the train with my left hand and gaining levels and grinding while G-chatting with John with Google Hangouts on my phone in my right hand, like simultaneously for entire train rides, like 3 times. Because of the area I found, and because of the amount of experience I was getting, and because of the speed, I was skyrocketing levels. And I reached level 99 at the beginning of Chapter 5 because I couldn't beat a single asterisk bearer, and I was getting rolled by normal enemies. So I just grinded, and it was so fast, I was like, well, what the hell? I might as well go to level 99. Level 99 in Chapter 5.
So that literally got you up to...
Say that again. Are you doing math in your head right now?
You just froze, but you're kind of back again.
Oh, good. Yeah, you kind of had. I thought you were like, so you, and then you just kind of stopped.
So you were up to the maximum level that you could possibly be. In
Chapter 5 of 9.
You still had 4 more chapters.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
now, Cody didn't mention that, but your jobs also gain levels, listener. So, like, you gain levels as a character, and then as your jobs gain individual levels as well. So there were still things for you to advance.
There are still things to advance. but my experience points had reached maximum. I also maxed out like half of the job, or more than half of the job classes for each character. And at that point, I was like, I don't need every character to master every job, so I stopped changing jobs, and I turned off enemy encounters. I have not encountered an enemy since Chapter 4. Or since Chapter 5, I guess. Because what's the point? It's literally a waste of time. If you see 20 dots on the map that you need to go fight bosses, like, I have to travel to all of those and fight those boss battles. I'm not going to, like, fight through a dungeon to get to a boss that I have to kill, optionally, you know? That would have taken... I mean, I'm at 73 hours. If I had fought through every dungeon again, it would have taken easily 150. I mean, it would have been insane. So that's a bit of a drawback, I think, is that the difficulty spikes so quickly. I overgrinded, I understand, but at the same time, I was also able to grind up so fast that I reached that level, and then enemy encounters became useless. So when I got to the final dungeon, there's an optional dungeon that has new enemies, and the final dungeon has enemies. I haven't fought any regular enemies in either of them, because it's like, what's the point? What am I trying to prove?
Sure.
If I want to like fill my bestiary, I guess, but who cares? So that was kind of interesting.
Maybe there are items that you can get dropped from some of those enemies in dungeons that would be beneficial.
Maybe that would be
equipment,
a good
that kind of thing.
Choice. That would be a good game design choice. I hope that's the case. I was not aware of that. And there is one optional dungeon available in Chapter 9, the final dungeon. I literally just ran. It was like 10 minutes straight. It's 10 floors. Maybe not 10, maybe 8 minutes or maybe 10 minutes straight of just running through the dungeon, grabbing every treasure chest, going down the stairs. You know, at the start of the game, I told you those blue treasure chests you can't open until chapter 6, I think. And you just get a key so you can open all these. There's a blue treasure chest in basically every dungeon in the game. And I said, well, you can turn off encounters and just run through the dungeons and, you know, pick them all up. And John, you were like, that doesn't sound fun.
That is what I said.
Yeah, and the optional dungeon was not fun because I wasn't fighting monsters because there was no point. So I just ran through, got all the chests, got to the basement. Then there was the optional boss. The, you know, the Square Enix legendary difficult boss or whatever. I won't spoil who it is, but it is one of the most ludicrously overpowered boss battles I have ever played. I used all of my Bravely Seconds summoning. I summoned both of my friends that did 999,999 damage, in addition to like 2 others that did 500,000 damage, and I barely beat him, like very barely. The optional battle is ludicrous.
That's crazy.
Yeah, but I beat it. And that's the way Square likes it. You know, they're always like that. But I beat it, and I have the hat to prove it, because you get some stupid token, doesn't do anything. But yeah, I got it. And then I was like, and I did that yesterday, I think. And that's when I was like, I can finally go to the final dungeon, final boss battle. Because Chapter 9, you're done with the crystals, right? Chapter 8, you've unlocked 20 crystals at that point. You go in the Holy Pillar. You're in the final parallel world. You go to the Great Chasm. That's where the final boss is. Awesome. There is a kind of cool storyline twist, too. It's fun. Go to the final dungeon. Ran through that for 20 minutes this morning because I wasn't fighting battles. I was just grabbing treasure chests and running through it. And I got to the final boss. And the final boss, despite all of the battling I've done, I have done 3 different job builds now, and the final boss is destroying me. So it is a hell of a final boss.
Perfect.
Which is good, and it will feel very rewarding. I'm actually going to wait till tomorrow morning to attempt it again because I'm going to update my friends and try to get a few more friends with like ludicrous damage that they can deal. But at this point, I'm ready for the game to be over. I'm definitely ready for it to be over. But it's been fun, and at no point, having set this on hard mode the whole time, at no point has it failed to provide some sort of challenge. So that's really.
And that's a good thing.
Yeah, it is.
That's a good thing. I mean that's actually, it seems like that's kind of a design of Square Enix games now where there's like a cap because you know, in long ago role-playing games, you wouldn't end the game at level 99. You'd end the game somewhere in whatever, not at the highest level.
Like 50 or 60.
And if you ever did take the time to get up to level 99, you would roll everything, whatever optional bosses were in the game, whatever final bosses there were. I mean, you'd destroy everything. But you look at a game like Final Fantasy 13, or a game like Bravely Default here, and in Final Fantasy 13, there's that Crystarium, and you can fill out the entire Crystarium. And by the end of the game, I think most people probably do. And that game is still challenging. And here now you've got Bravely Default, which is the same thing. You get your characters up to level 99. Your character's level 99 for basically half of the game, and the game was still challenging. And I think that that's one of the challenges of role-playing game design specifically, is that you need to make it so that people can try to level to make battles easier on them, but you don't want to make it so it's like a fail-proof way to continue succeeding in the game. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
And it seems like they've done that now. It seems like they've done that with like their most recent role-playing games.
That makes sense to me. I would agree with that. And you like challenge, right?
Which, I mean, it's a good thing. I love challenge. I absolutely love challenge. I mean, I'm the Dark Souls guy, you know?
The Dark Souls. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's repetitive, essentially replaying the same game 4 times after you've beaten it. I understand wholeheartedly why people have a problem with it. I think that, if you put a gun to somebody's head and you said you have to play this game 5 times, you have to design a game where you play it 5 times in a row. Someone put a gun to your head and you had to design it. I don't think anybody could have done a better job than Square Enix did. I mean, because again, they switch up the dialogue. They kept me very interested in the story in chapter 5 and 6. After 6, you really know what's up. You know what's going on. You know the twist. You know the villain. 7 and 8 are just kind of going through the motions. But again, they add a bunch of humor to 7 and especially 8. Like they even give it kind of a much lighter feel in the last couple. And they change the mood. They make it as interesting as they can. And once you've spent a lot of time with all these characters, like, you're familiar with them, and by the 5th time you're fighting them, you're getting that twist, but you're still I did not hate this game. It definitely got tedious at times. It's a questionable game design decision to go the route they did. It is not for everybody. But I think if you wanted to pick up the game, beat the next chapters, get to chapter 5, do a few battles, and then maybe you get bored of it, put it down, pick it up in 6 months, play around with the job classes or something like that. I think that if somebody's trying to plow through it in a weekend, because again, somebody that really took issue with this game was Jamie Butterworth, and he has admitted he consumes games very quickly. He'll grab a game, pound it over the weekend, and then he's on to the next.
Sure.
He's into that. He's into I'll grab this in the bargain bin on Saturday. What's this? Oh, this looks cool. Boom, 14 hours, a week or whatever later, and then on to the next. And that's a different way of consuming games. I'm the kind of guy that'll play a game for 6 to 8 months, clearly, before I actually beat it or review it. There's just different ways of consuming games, and I think Bravely Default is not one for the kind of person that wants to get through games quickly or really binge it. Because if I played this on the train a half hour in the morning, half hour at night. If I had just sat and played this for 6 hours a day, I would have hated this game after 3 days.
Yeah, for sure.
You've got to play it in moderation.
You'd be doing literally the same thing over and over again.
Absolutely, absolutely. So you just got to do it in moderation. And I think that for that style of gamer, I think it's actually a really good game. I mean, again, if you just want to play the first, and here's the other thing, you can end the game at any point. When you awaken after chapter 4, when you awaken a crystal, you have to tap the X button to awaken it, and it comes back to life. And Ares says, "Stop, stop, don't go anymore," and then you stop, and the crystal shines for a few seconds. If you keep mashing X, you break a crystal, and it fast forwards you to the final chapter. So at any point you can beat the game. You're just not going to get the best ending. So, if you really wanted to beat it, if you are the kind of guy that just wants to plow through it in a weekend or in a week or whatever, you could do it. Just plow through the first 4 chapters. You will love it. It's fun. It's not repetitive. You can customize the gameplay is phenomenally balanced. You'll have a blast. And then get to chapter 5, maybe fight a couple optional battles for a challenge, and then just break a crystal, and then you can beat the game, and it's all good. And and
then be like, nope, I'm done. I'm good.
Yeah, I'm done. So there's that option in there. Maybe some people that like playing games more quickly, are not really fond of the fact that they're not getting the best ending, and I can understand that too. But I think overall, for what it is, like, there's not a lot wrong with this game universally.
Sure.
Like, I don't think there's anything that every gamer is going to say this is terrible. Again, kind of questionable with the repeating worlds, but the music is amazing. Go listen to the live orchestra on YouTube if you haven't. Playing the music. The voice acting is pretty good. It grew on me a lot. I don't always like American voice actors, and the writing is pretty good. It is a little generic the first 4 chapters, but the characters get a lot of personality after that, and the villains are very. They remind me of Final Fantasy IV. They're very like character driven, Final Fantasy IV, you had like Rubicant, and he was like honorable, and he fought Edge, and all this stuff. Every villain in this game, every asterisk bearer is like that. They've got a name, they've got a class, they've got an attitude, they've got a distinct voice. So I think this is an exceptional game. I really do. The Street Pass features are integrated very well, very closely. The online features are integrated really well. It is a phenomenal game. I can see why people have issues with it, but it's a great game, and I'm going to eventually beat the end boss. Hopefully this week. We'll see.
I bet you do tomorrow.
Possibly. I'm honestly so like burned out on it after like fighting that optional boss.
Yeah, I believe you.
I'm just like how many builds do I have to try before I just want to Street Pass somebody that does 1,000,000 damage so I can just like roll. But of course, here's the other thing, like I haven't used my summons to take out the first form or the second form, because God knows how many forms there will be. Square Enix, there's probably like 6 forms or something. So, I roll the first or second or third form, and then suddenly there's another one, and then what the hell am I going to do? I'm screwed. So,
of course.
We'll see. But I feel like that was a very comprehensive review of the game. I don't usually feel like I do a great job explaining games and really digging in, but I think I nailed this one. What do you think?
I think you did. It sounds like you really enjoyed it. I'm glad you talked about it. I'll be honest, with just the sheer number of games that are out there now, you did a good job of explaining to me why I do not want to continue to play this game.
Yeah, and I figured that. I figured that would be your take.
There's so many games to play, and like that's so many times of running through the exact same thing.
It's true. But again, you pick up the 4-job Fiesta once a year. Maybe you play a chapter once a year. Play chapter 5. Play chapter 5 in November. Play chapter 6 the next November. Chapter 7 the next November. And then that's like Final Fantasy V 4-job Fiesta. It's just a little different because you're gonna have to recustomize and all that stuff too.
Sure, I'll keep that in mind. That sounds very reasonable. Like a real enjoyable way to play that game.
I mean, it kind of is. It's kind of valid. If your issue is with... Because if you're playing the 4-job Fiesta, you're doing the same thing. If you missed a listener, 4-job Fiesta is a Final Fantasy V playthrough where you're given a random job class to be assigned. So you're playing the same game. If you do the 4-job Fiesta this year, you get your 4 random job classes. If you do it next year, you're going to get 4 different random job classes and play through the same game. So it's essentially the same thing, right?
That 15 hours to play through.
Yeah, and this is 8 hours a chapter, so it's half as long.
Oh, perfect. Yep, you're right.
I'm just saying.
It doesn't sound the same to me.
I'm just saying you could tack it on. So, whatever. I hope the ending doesn't suck. And again, the story got really cool. And there's so many other features that I didn't even get into, like nemesis that get sent to your 3DS, and there's a robust blue mage system. If you are a completionist, my God, when you street pass people, sometimes they send you monsters. Square Enix will send you monsters too that are optional. You can fight them at any time. Just tap the lower screen in the village, and you'll fight them. They'll have blue magic spells like Blizzaja or Firaja, like the level 4 magic spells. But you've got to survive them and then beat them. So
I didn't realize that those were blue mage only.
Well, not blue mage. It's well, I don't want to spoil the job class, but there's a job class that essentially has blue mage.
Because you haven't spoiled the whole rest of the game yet.
Well, I spoiled the things that are essential to talk about the quality of the game. There's no reason to get into the minutia for those who have watched this and now want to play it. There's no reason to be like, oh yeah, by the way, spoiler alert, this character's a bad guy the whole time, or anything like that. Like that's like, who cares? That's not relevant to the quality of the game, I don't think. So there is essentially a blue mage class, but so there's half a dozen bosses, optional bosses, that are also level 99 that I haven't even touched and will not touch because I'm done with this freaking game.
Right.
But if you are obsessed with this game and you just want to really go to town, I mean, there is over 100 hours of content in this game easily.
Yeah, you just have to like the game, which is easy to do.
Yeah, love the game, and it is easy to do. So that's my incredibly comprehensive review of Bravely Default. And it's very late at night, so we should probably go to bed.
That's a good idea. You look really proud of yourself. Like you look like you've accomplished something right now.
Like I said, I honestly rarely talk about a game and don't think immediately afterwards like, oh, I missed something, I missed blah blah blah. I think I nailed everything. Like everything. It's kind of weird. I'm not used to being good at this.
It wasn't that good.
I mean, it wasn't that good, but for me...
Well, I mean, it's more like that you're not that good.
No, it's not that it wasn't that good.
It wasn't that good. It's just that you're not that good.
Fair. That's fair. That's very fair, yeah. So, yeah, go pick up Bravely Default, please. We also, one of our contributors, Chris Long, gave his first impressions of Bravely Default on unqualifiedgamers.com. So just go to our website, search for Bravely Default, and you'll find his first impressions, as well as John talking in more detail about the combat system.
And recently some news came out. This game sold 1 million copies, which is really big for a 3DS game. I mean, especially a new...
An IP?
Yeah, it's a new IP. It's not, Monster Hunter is going to sell 3 million, 4 million copies every time it comes out because it's Monster Hunter. But this is like a brand new thing, and it sold 1 million copies, and that, I think, has been considered very successful. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, definitely. The 3D also works really well in the game, too, by the way. Like, really well. I'm glad they take advantage of it.
Sure.
Because I played Pokemon Y, and Pokemon Y didn't do any 3D. And I'm like, what are you doing, Nintendo?
Yeah, they didn't really lean into it. That's not what they were looking for,
Yeah, but that really upset me. I really wanted 3D.
Yeah, I don't know. The battles, I actually think Pokemon X and Y did a good job because they kind of did it with a subtle, they didn't overdo it at all.
And that's true. I really like the way Bravely Default did it as well.
Okay.
So, I hope you don't have to work in the morning because it's gonna be
not tomorrow. Yeah, well, I have to take care of my son, so
Daddy daycare.
Daddy daycare day.
That's exciting. And I mentioned unqualifiedgamers.com, and there's one other thing. I wanted to give a shout out. Oh gosh, I forgot to pull it up right before this. We have a listener who. So a couple weeks ago, when I was between my last job and this job that I just started. A couple weeks ago, I spent some time on our website uploading a lot of our older episodes, and there is a listener who has been listening to some of our classic episodes and actually emailing me and helping me, kind of pointing out when I didn't censor the swears, because we didn't used to be like kind of a TV PG-13 whatever audio podcast. Now we don't censor on YouTube, of course. We're uncut on YouTube, but the digitally remastered podcast is higher audio quality. I cut out all cursing. It's usually abbreviated just a bit. I cut out like the intro and outro a bit, and so just a little bit different.
Some of the dead air.
Yeah, some of the dead air. It sounds much better. I would really recommend it, honestly, because I know you're not looking at us for an hour, so. Go check that out, unqualifiedgamers.com or iTunes. But yeah, our listener Ryan, I just want to say thank you. He has been emailing us, emailing me timestamps of when there are swears that I didn't edit in our older episodes. So Ryan, thank you so much. You are awesome. If we had anything to give away, I would totally give it to you. You're just like super cool, and you know, a lot of times we'll get emails from just random people we've never met before in person, and that's always like super awesome because we just like, I don't know, we have fun doing it, and we hope you do too. And when we hear that people are having fun, it's like really exciting for me and John. Like
It is always awesome.
it's like really exciting. So thank you specifically, Ryan, like so much for doing that. That's awesome. Shout out to you and everybody else listening. Like, you know, thanks for sticking with us. We're at 83 episodes and we're
counting.
We're gonna keep being nerds and talking about video games. And winter is coming, so we'll even be on time and home sometimes.
And hopefully playing more video games once the winter starts.
Yeah, seriously. Me too. Even this took me 8 months. 8 months to get to this review.
I know, and you're playing on the bus like every day.
Yeah, every day. God, I've been playing this game for so long. So, anyway, that's all I got to say about that.
Listener, as usual, thank you so much for joining us here on this episode of Unqualified Gamers.
And listener, as usual, I'm just going to step on John's outro and say something asinine anyway.
Okay.
Poop.
It was a really good one. That's a good outro.